All right. My name is Sam, and today we're going to be doing the video discussion for week 11. Um, the situation says that you are a licensed tech. You are walking to the ER where you have a stat order waiting for you. You notice an inpatient laying on a gurney in front of the CT room. There are currently no other employees in the CT room, and at the moment. So the patient is alone in the CT room, but you also have a stat order. You have your own. And what do you do? So we're going to go in order identifying the critical thinking steps. The first one, identifying the problem. I wrote that no patient should be unattended in the CT room, but we have a stat order waiting for us. So that is pending. Angela, what did you put for yours?
So for identifying the problem,
Correct.
I put whose responsibility, and it could be like the department, so the CT department or us like as employees, like just being like healthcare employees, if it's our responsibility too to be checking up on patients in general, because we're like staff of the hospital. So I just put both of those, so the CT department and then employees. But I don't know if it's necessarily just the department or like all the employees.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a really good way of thinking about it, not just what the problem is, but what other problem it might include. Like, for example, whose responsibility is it to attend to that patient? What about you, Kendra?
Well, I also agreed what the problem was. There was the conflict between the immediate order that we have in the ER, plus seeing a patient unattended in the hallway. And so then the cause of the problem, I mean, we don't really know. I would see it as, since I'm a licensed tech, it would become my responsibility because I'm the only healthcare professional right there presently. So of course you kind of wonder who left the patient there. But also like where I'm at, every order from the ER is stat, and then it's taken kind of with a grain of salt because then there's always labs that need to be taken or could be get in the way of taking care of their order as soon as possible. So I would kind of think, I mean, if it was a real emergency, immediate emergency, there would be a code. But I would think that the patient being left alone would be more of the immediate problem.
Yeah, you're right. I think even Professor Steele mentions in one of the lectures that they write stat so often that they had to create ranks or codes or grades of stat because of the same reason, because they are all stat. In my department, every order that comes through the ER, it's stat. So no one really treats it as such.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Crystal?
For identifying the problem, I mean, it would be who's whose department is it and like who would be responsible. Like you would think the CT, but I feel like as healthcare workers, like we all have a responsibility to patients. So I feel like no matter like even if a patient is like asking you for something, you would go help them. You wouldn't just be like, "Oh, I'm not your nurse," or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like even if it's just for like a blanket or something, I feel like, no people be left alone. Like if they need something, you would go and get that person or call them. Usually my department has a phone, so we would call because usually every person has a phone to call. But
Definitely. Yeah, I
yeah,
think the only place where a patient can be left alone is in their room and where they are being monitored by the nurses. In the ER example, I think also in-house patients are monitored, right, constantly by
But I'll
nurses.
say, especially in-house patients.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
definitely we need to know where our patients are. They can't just be abandoned in a hallway.
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Okay, Kimberly.
Yeah, I would have the same identifying the problem, like the patient's alone, why were they alone? You know, I know like sort of CT and X-ray is kind of the same department, but not at the same time. So it's kind of hard for me to like be able to see what the main problem is. But since they are in the hallway, it's kind of like, where's everyone at? Why are they alone? You know, things like that. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like, we don't necessarily, I don't think the problem is that, I guess that we leave them alone as well, because then that also adds to the problem. But it's also like who's actually in charge of the patient, because they can be in the hallway causing even more problems, being in the way of things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if this tech or person left a patient alone in the room, I mean, it makes you wonder, was there another emergency, or are they being careless? Are they having like a breakdown? I did actually witness something similar. I had a tech in my department that had like a moment where he was very angry, frustrated. He was inside the department, so no patient saw him, but still, I mean, they are still humans, so it happens. All right, and as for the second step, we have investigate the problem, and I wrote, as long as the rails on the gurney are raised, the patient should be safe, but they should not be in there alone. The order that we have, even though it is stat, surely that patient is safer than the one that was left alone. So kind of what Kendra said about it. Um, but what do you write for that step, Angela?
I put, it depends like what kind of condition the patient is, if they need like urgent attention, like if something's going on with the patient too. Just that's a big investigating factor, is seeing how the patient is doing, if they're unresponsive. And part of investigating the problem I have is like safety, risk, and liability. And the patient safety is number one. And if there's any risk, if they're like in a condition that puts them at risk for like falling or injuring themselves. And then liability, yeah, like it's the hospital's liability to take care of the patient.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, making sure that the patient is safe, most of all. If they need oxygen, make sure that it is connected, that the rails are up, and all of that. I mean, if they left it alone, at least you will think that they left it safe in a way. Definitely. Kendra?
I agree with both of you as far as investigating the problem. Like, definitely see the patient's condition, make sure the rails are up, the brakes are on. And then also, like, who would be affected by the problem of the patient, of course, and then the hospital due to liability. Technical considerations. I mean, I guess they kind of go along with the liability. And then, I mean, investigating, I'd want to know, like, where does that patient really belong? Like, where are they coming from? And that would help figure out what condition the patient is in. I would want to look, on I guess the orders for the day to kind of see where they're coming from. I don't know if I'm getting too far ahead in the critical thinking or not. But I mean, that's huge, trying to figure out where the patient's coming from, because that will give you more of an idea of their condition.
Yeah, no, you're right. Also identifying the patient, like you said, I mean, trying to find out who that person is. And I think some of them have the wristband. I'm not sure if all of them have it. I think in the ER, only the ones that are at fall risk have it, but I'm not entirely sure because I don't see every patient with it. But yeah, looking through the orders and see who that person is, see why they are there, and yeah, making sure that they are okay. I mean, I know that some of them, especially geriatric patients, they have problems holding their bladder, and I don't know if the problem set it, the situation, but what if the patient was left there alone after the CT exam? And
Right.
they do say that the contrast gives you like a warm sensation throughout your whole body, and also gives you the sensation that you are urinating yourself. So what if they have to go to the restroom afterwards? Like,
And
we
I
have
guess
to
that's
attend to
another,
them.
sorry, that's another reason why I'd want to look at the orders that were, just the calendar on the computer to see if it was done, if it was waiting to be done. And that would give you a clue too, because I mean, it could be something as like maybe the tech had to go to the bathroom really fast. Who knows? You
So-
might.
Yeah, maybe they had that situation, that emergency. Crystal?
I would have to agree too. I feel like investigating, just finding out like the condition of the patient is really important. Like just to make sure they're okay and they're like, I mean, if they're safe and everything. Cause like I think Professor Steele gave an example of a tech, they left them in the bed and they just kind of rolled off or something like that, like a while back. So it's like you don't want to leave them alone either. Like you want to investigate and see what's going on and where the tech is, or ask the patient if they're able to answer.
Yeah, that's another thing. I didn't think about that, but you could even ask the patient, hey, so who was with you or where did they go, and find a little more information about it.
Yeah.
And Kimberly?
Yeah, the most, I think the crucial part of like identifying and investigating the problem would be, is the patient unconscious? Is he awake? Is he able to speak up? Are they able to say who they were with last? Or like, are they stable? Do they seem okay to be left alone for 5 minutes to be able to go find someone else to take care of that while you deal with something else? Just that sort of thing, making sure that they're okay before leaving them alone.
Yeah, definitely making sure that everything is fine, double checking with the patient, making sure that if they are waiting, at least that they are aware that the person that was with them left, and to know why or how long they are waiting for, or if they had any idea of it. Yeah, that's good. For the following step, we have formulate viable solutions to the problem. I wrote that I will look around and see if there is a tech in the vicinity around the corners of the CT room to let them know about the patient. I could also try to contact somebody through the phone, like one of you mentioned that some techs or most of them have their own phone, their own line. Maybe call the department and see who is designated to the CT that day. Another option is to stay with the patient until somebody arrives. As we said before, the stats are not really stats. Maybe they can wait. Definitely, they are less urgent than a patient left alone in the room. And for these steps, I would like to go in the reverse order. And so we're going to start with Kimberly.
So a possible solution could be just making sure they're okay enough to be able to go away and like ask for help. So for instance, like let's say, oh, can you be alone for like 2 minutes max, run to wherever your stat x-ray is or procedure, and then ask someone, oh, can you go do this? I need to do this. What if it is that they need you right away, but then you can't like neglect the patient as well over there. So it's sort of like finding that balance between, can I leave them alone and can I still do this other procedure?
Definitely. If you're not able to stay with him, find someone that could, or find somebody that can cover for you on that start order. That's another good option. Crystal?
I would probably just check and see where the patient is supposed to be at. I know we have like we have the phones with us, or a tech that has a phone, and I've seen them call the transporter in to even just like if they need to be moved or anything, or stay with them while you go and deal, like if it's an emergency would be a good idea, or call CT and see where they are if they're being held up.
Yeah, find any way to find any more information about the situation and ways that you can, I guess, do both responsibilities, like not neglecting the patient or your exam. Kendra?
So where my side is, the departments are, so they're like connected, the CT and the radiology department, it's all one because it's so tiny. And the bathrooms are right outside the CT room where I'm imagining where the patient would have been left. So after seeing that the patient was stable, I would probably check the bathrooms first to see if the tech was in there. And because I'd want to keep my eyes on the patient, I probably would wheel the patient back into the CT room. And from there, I'd be able to use the phone that's there and the computer. So I could like find out this where the patient came from, and also if their exam was done or if they're waiting to be done. And then I would, if it needed to be done, I guess I would get a hold of maybe the supervisor. They're often not there though. And if I couldn't find the tech, I guess I would find out where that patient came from and probably take them back so they'd have a nurse, they'd be where they were and they'd have somebody watching them, because I couldn't just rely on a tech to just show up whenever if they aren't showing up. I mean, I guess I would give it a certain amount of time and wait, but I probably would call the emergency department and let them know that there was a holdup, just so they weren't wondering where I was. But I don't think I would want to take eyes off the patient for too long.
Yeah, so it's good that you, I'm sorry about the noise, are giving priority to the patient, to not leaving the patient alone, because I feel like that's the most important thing. You mentioned looking for the tech, but keeping eyes on the patient or calling the ER. And usually the CT rooms, or probably most of them, have that little office that has the window that
Right.
you can see the room. So yeah, you could even make the call there, keeping eyes on the patient, but
But
not leaving them unattended after you've noticed that they are alone.
But I mean, of course, if the patient could answer, I would ask them, who brought you here and
course.
have you had this exam? What, are you done with the exam? I mean, and of course, if they said they were done with the exam, it'd be really easy to just take them back. Like, because we don't have transporters, it's us or,
Mm. Yeah, and even when you're doing the transportation, you introduce yourself, so they may be able to ID the person that brought them in. That way you may have a better idea,
Right.
definitely. And Angela?
I fully agree with what Kendra said, making sure the patient's good, asking them if they're okay, maybe see what they know what's going on, and then like quickly looking around to see if there's any CT techs around that know what's going on. And if there's no one, just utilize like your phones and all your sources to call people who may know, like if it's an inpatient, they must have a nurse in the unit that is their nurse. And just because a lot of the techs do have like phones to text other techs like, hey, I can't get that stat, I'm helping a patient, and just figure it out. And I'm sure you can get a hold of someone, like whether it's a nurse, other CT techs, to make sure that that patient is in good hands before you fully leave them alone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could, like you said, ask another staff member. It doesn't have to be a tech, or you could hang around, because usually they don't leave the CT room unattended, and if they do, it's for a very short amount of time. So even if it's not the same tech that left the patient there, another one may come by, and if they are assigned to that station, then they could look after the patient. Yeah. And for the last step, we have select the best solution. And I will stay with the patient, because even though we have the assigned order, chances are that the patient is safer than the patient that is alone in the CT room, even if the order says stat. All right. What did you put, Kimberly?
I would first think about what's best for the patient. So like I said, just making sure they're in like stable conditions. That way they're able to remain alone if need be, or like you said, making sure like they're not alone. So that could be anywhere from like leaving them in the hands of someone else, or just staying with them and then having someone else come and like take your spot for the ER exam.
Yeah, I feel that's the best solution. I mean, just give priority to the situation. And Crystal?
I agree. Like, I feel like you would I feel like I would call, so like I would stay with the patient and wait for someone to come. Usually there's like at my department there's like multiple techs working, and then if possible like have them take over the stat ER, like because usually it's not stat, usually the labs go first or the EKG goes first. Like we're usually last to go, so I would probably do something like that unless I could find someone to like take over to watch the patient.
Yeah, definitely. The point is that after we notice that the patient is alone, and if we ignore that, then I think it will fall onto our responsibility as we had left it alone or left the patient alone. Because we will be doing the same thing that whoever left him did.
Mhm.
Kendra?
Well, I think I would first figure out whether the exam had already been done or not. So if the exam had already been done and you can tell on the computer, I would just take them back to where they belong and then let the nurse, you know, how you normally would, let them know that their patient is back and then just get on with my exam. But if it had not been done, I would try to find a tech or someone else in the department who could take over until the tech who's going to do the procedure shows up. But I definitely wouldn't leave the patient alone until I figured, you know, that out.
Yeah, I think those are really viable solutions. Like you said, I hadn't thought about it, like looking in the computer, seeing if they already processed the exam. And if that's the case, you may even be able to find the room that the patient belongs to and just take him, her into the room and then go on with yours.
Mhm.
And Angela?
I definitely think the best solution is staying with the patient, not leaving them until you have it figured out, until you know that they're safe. But also dealing with the stat patient by texting someone else, making sure that's good too.
Yeah, that's a good idea to at least let somebody know, hey, so I had this stat order, but there's this patient alone in here, so I'm just going to be with the patient until somebody else arrives. Yeah, because like as somebody mentioned, if they don't call for an emergency trauma, usually the hospitals they have assigned rooms to the more
Critical patient.
critical patients. Thank you. Yeah. And that way you know if you have to go right away or if it
Mhm.
can wait.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Okay. I think we cover all of the steps. Does anybody have any other comments in addition to what we said? No? All right, perfect. Well, thank you very much.